Hello everybody, today we're going to be playing Bloodfang and we're going to be playing one of the new cards, Wulven Strategist. And I think this deck is really cool, it's super unique, and I can't wait to show you all how it works. Anyway, this is a matchup against Bidru Dragons, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to sacrifice some of our early sacrifices are pretty easy in this deck. You're generally going to be sacrificing your 4 cost abilities. Now, this deck completely revolves around, and I'll just continue these 4 cost Wulven abilities that usually don't see that much play because they're very situational. And what this deck does is it basically uses Wulven Strategist to make it a lot less situational because you can seek the 4 cost ability you need and play it. But when it's the early game, you can just sacrifice them, and I like to sacrifice the attachments. I think those are the easiest sacrifices. So that's what you're doing early on. You're also just setting up. Blood Moon is probably the best turn 2 play, Transporting Golem the best turn 3 play, or turn 4 play. Another great turn 4 play is Shadow Font. All those are valid turn 4 plays. Now, our opponent here gets off to a very strong start with a Baptism of Fire plus the Dustcrawler, and so now we're forced to kind of actually go on the offensive there. And so I'm going to play Stun Turret to remove the Shroud. It's important to note that whenever you activate Stun Turret, its effect, part of the effect makes it lose durability, and Shroud cancels the whole ability. So Stun Turret against Shroud is basically free. It's just going to cancel the Shroud and nothing else will happen. You won't lose the durability at the end of the turn for using Stun Turret on a Shroud ally. That's what makes Stun Turret one of the best counters to Shroud. And so that's why I chose to go ahead and play Stun Turret there onto the Dustcrawler. If this wasn't a Baptism of Fire, maybe we could have done something like Rabid Bite or something, but we're kind of forced to get rid of that Shroud first, and then on our next turn, we're hoping to Rabid Bite or maybe something else. So we do, in this deck, it is a slower deck. I'll say that. You are most prone in the early game when you're trying to set up, you're trying to play your Transporting Golem, Blood Moon, and draw more cards. And so here, we're already going to be on a really low health count. Our opponent's going to take us down to 11 health. But I'll show you why this deck can still be strong even when that happens. And it's because you can make an incredible comeback with this deck with the Strategist. So we're going to play one of Strategist, and then we're going to play another Strategist from our hand with Bloodfang. So that's going to give us 2 searches. So to talk about Strategist for a little bit, its activated ability lets you seek a cost 4 or higher Wulven ability. It comes in with haste, so you get to do that on the turn you summon it. Now, the first Wulven ability that was cost 4 or greater you summon each turn costs 2 less resources. So when you summon 2 like this, which is what I really like doing, your first ability is free. And now what we did there is we're going to search whatever ability we want, really, and I think we already had it in our hand, but one thing we could have searched, even if we didn't have it in our hand, is Gut-Wrenching Roar. This is a card that never saw any play despite how strong it is. You target a friendly Wulven ally, you exhaust it, and 2 opposing allies of cost 4 or lower are shuffled back into the deck. That's really, really powerful, and the reason it hasn't seen play is because oftentimes you don't have a Wulven ally that you can exhaust, and that obviously means you need to have something like haste or something, so it's a little hard to use that way, and it's just really situational. Like, sometimes your opponent doesn't have 2 4-cost allies out, and so then it's not that good. But especially in the meta that we're in, and the fact that you can just seek it out when you need it, or sacrifice it when you don't need it, that makes this really strong. So as you can see, we're going to actually target both of our opponent's allies and shuffle them back. So our opponent invested a ton of resources into that, that Dustcrawler there, and just sending it away just like that, 2 of their allies is pretty deadly. And so we went from really behind, only on 11 health, and now I think we've got pretty strong control of the board. So here, I'm going to go ahead and do another play. So one of the reasons I like this replay so much, we're going to see the other way that we're going to win. So obviously we can counter the opponent's strategy with all those 4-cost abilities, but the Wulven tribe has some really great 4-cost abilities. This one's Wulven Resilience. It's probably one that you haven't seen that much because it's not that common of a card. When you attach it to an ally, a Wulven ally, you remove all other attachments from it. So this instantly counters stuff like Crippling Blow. It counters stuff like Captured Prey. Even some of those mage attachments that can kind of slow you down, it just removes those. It will also remove your own attachments, so be careful of that. But this one also gives you +3 attack, and all the damage to that ally is reduced by 1. So I'm going to attach this to the Strategist. That's going to put it on 7 attack. And then the second attachment there, Pack Alpha, this one gives an ally +2 attack and +3 health. A friendly Wulven ally. So as you can see, those two attachments together, that costs 6 resources. We don't really care about losing card advantage there because Strategist is fueling us so many cost for abilities. Now we have a 9/7 that has 1 damage reduction, and that's insane. That's a lot of firepower there. So we're just going to go ahead and crash it into the Badiru because we want to start threatening our opponent there. And I really don't want my opponent to have this weapon out. I think if I can get rid of the weapon, that's really good for us. So that's why I go ahead and just go face there. Now we're basically 2 turns away from essentially winning the game because at 9 attack, that's really deadly. If Badiru doesn't draw into something really strong there, I think there's not much they can do. In the meantime, we're just going to search Rabid Bite. Rabid Bite is another card that, honestly, you never see in Bloodfang. You see it a lot in maybe Darklaw, that's like a solo Darklaw, but Rabid Bite is a weird card because normally you would rather just kill the opposing ally. But in this deck, because of the fact that you can just seek it out with Strategist, it's actually really good. Getting to chip in more damage and punish your opponent from playing fatties makes Rabid Bite really strong in this deck. So I've been really liking it when I've been testing it. And as you can see, we went from being really behind to all of a sudden controlling the board and threatening game. So this is the kind of deck that counters what your opponent does and then has a really strong counter attack due to the advantage you're getting from playing all these 4-cost Wulven abilities. Now, the main downside of this deck, obviously, is that you have to play a lot of bad cards. A lot of these 4-cost Wulven abilities just aren't that good. And so that's why we have so much draw power, and the fact that we're just a pure 40-card deck, that's part of why. We want to increase our chances of drawing Strategist. If you don't draw Strategist, you're basically done for. And we want to increase our chances of drawing into some of those setup cards and those draw cards. And that mitigates some of the downside of running so many 4-cost abilities that, frankly, aren't that good unless you have the Strategist out. So here's another game where we're just going to Blood Moon. Blood Moon is the best turn 2 play. There's also Wulven Prophet you can do, especially if you're going second. That's quite a nice turn 2 play. Situationally, this Bloodpack Shaman is a good turn 2 play, especially with first turn advantage when you're going first. But in general, I think I like to actually sacrifice the Shamans if I see them early. So there we go. We do sacrifice the Shaman. I'm hoping that Rabid Bite hits the Dirk Saber, but sadly we miss. That's part of the downside of Rabid Bite. You also have to rely a little bit on luck there. The Stop Thief on the Transporting Golem is a little bit annoying, but honestly fine there, because really the main purpose of Transporting Golem is just to soak up some damage and let you draw a card. And now our opponent is hitting us again with a Dirk Saber. And here is where we go ahead and we do our counterattack. Now, because of Lyra, we have to discard a random card. It's always dangerous when the opponent has Lyra out. This could have gone very wrong, because if Bloodfang targets the Strategist and then the Lyra randomly discards the Strategist, then we just summon nothing. So we were a little bit lucky there. I mean, like 1 in 6 chance, really. But we were a little lucky there that the Strategist didn't get discarded. Lyra is one of the better counters, I think, to something like Badiru or Bloodfang, because you can sometimes snipe out the card they want to summon. But luckily that didn't happen, so we can summon the Strategist, and now you can see we don't actually have the Gut-Wrenching Roar, but we're able to search it out. Now I go for my favorite play. I play the second Strategist. That means the ability we're going to summon this turn is going to be free, and now we can use that Gut-Wrenching Roar to send back 2 cards. And I decide not to send out the Buccaneer because I'm more worried about the ambush there. I think on 3 attack, it can't really kill either of mine without getting counterattacked, so chances are it's just going to go face. So that's why I went ahead and just did that. So the Buccaneer goes face. And the nice thing about summoning two strategists is it's very hard to kill both of them. So thankfully, we still have one strategist out, and that's really helpful, especially so now we can go for the Torn Apart play. This is another very situational 4-cost Wulven ally ability. You have to have two Wulven allies out, but it kills any ally your opponent controls and gives all of your allies 1 health. So it's very good in certain situations like that one where our opponent has a fatty out, we want to just kill it and increase our health here. So our opponent goes ahead and plays my tribute card, Mo George. I won that in one of the monthly contests. And so, discards their hand, has the Viper, stuns and disables, poisons and disables one of ours. And so here, we're just going to go ahead and bring out that Pack Alpha, bringing out this Bloodpack Shaman to a 5/5. Now all of a sudden, it used to be a 3/1, now it's a 5/5. Now it's actually going to be pretty tough for our opponent to deal with. That's tough for our opponent, I think. Opponent goes ahead and goes for another Treasure Seeker into Slithering Viper. That is always a really nice combo there. And now I think we're just going to push damage. So that's one of the things about this deck. You do run out of fuel, so you always want to be aware of that. We're currently on 14 cards in the deck, going to 13 cards in the deck, and we're drawing more cards. And so you do want to be aware, you have a time limit. And so at some point, you do want to start doing things like Rabid Bite and just going face. So now we're just going to go face. We're not going to bother killing this Treasure Seeker because we can just Rabid Bite it while going face. I think that's ideally what you want to be doing here. Trying to pressure the board so that the opponent has to respond. Our opponent responds with this Obsidian Trader, tries to draw into something good, and that's that. So as you can see, it's a very powerful deck. We'll do one more we'll do one more game. As you can see, it's a very powerful deck. I've been doing pretty well with it. It's sort of consistent. I think if you don't draw into the strategist here, you're kind of screwed. But yeah. Anyway, just to go over this game now, I don't play the Pendant here. I actually think that one of the bigger mistakes people make is they just rush Pendant out on turn 1 without really thinking about some factors. So here's what I try to think about when I decide on whether I'm playing Pendant on turn 1 or not. The first thing I think about is the opponent likely to Bad Santa me? And since I'm going first, the answer there is no. The opponent is probably not going to play Bad Santa. So for that reason, I don't have to play Obsidian Pendant right away because I could just hold it in my hand. The other thing I like to think about is the matchup. And it's true, Obsidian Pendant is really good against Amber. When the Amber plays their Blood Frenzy or their Jeweler's Dream, you can blow it up. But the other thing I want to think about is card advantage. Do I have, the card advantage to spare? And I know I have the Blood Moon there, but I don't think I need to rush out the Pendant just right away because I might want to sacrifice it if something else better comes up. So that's why I didn't go ahead and play the Pendant right away. Here we draw into our second strategist. That's always really nice to have 2 of them, so I really like that, and I'm just going to keep both of them. And now I play the Pendant because now I think if I didn't, then maybe I would be prone to something like Bad Santa. And so I don't think there's really a disadvantage to holding on to it as much as people think. Like, in some scenarios, it makes sense to play it on turn 1, but you don't have to, and that's why I kind of save it there. Anyway, here, I'm just careful to make sure I'm just going to be on 6 cards. That's the case, so I can activate the Transporting Golem and not hit my hand limit there. We're approaching a turn where doing a double strategist will make sense, so I set up with the Shadow Font. Shadow Font is a card I haven't talked about, actually, so this is something that's probably a really strong turn 4 play. It's a good play overall if you have card advantage, if you are able to get some Blood Moons going. Otherwise, it can be bad later in the game, but what I really like about it is it sets up your double strategist play really nicely. Even if you're going first, on turn 5, you can play a double strategist. So that's why Shadow Font can be nice there. Anyway, our opponent is just going to go ahead and play their Jeweler's Dream. I think our opponent got off to a little bit of a slow start, and that is going to help us a little bit. As you can see, our health is still full, and our opponent has summoned their messenger. Um, and yeah, we're just kind of pretty happy about that because now we can just go directly into our strategist combo. So playing the first strategist, seeking out Wulven Resilience, that's always nice. Bringing out our second strategist, and then we can summon out another one of our abilities. I forgot which one I grabbed actually. Right, Rabid Bite. So another reason Rabid Bite is really nice is you can take off durability from your opponent's weapons, as we do there. We are just able to take that fleet-footed messenger, attack it into our opponent's hero. That not only does the counterattack damage onto their ally, but it also disables their ally and takes off a durability from their weapon. So, yeah. This is going to show why Crippling Blow, I mean, it's not an effective way to counter this deck because actually it's already in our hand, but we could have always searched this Wulven Resilience, and now we can just discard that Crippling Blow. So there you go. Now it actually kind of almost was useless entirely, and then we can Gut-Wrenching Roar. Yeah, this deck can be pretty mean. We can Gut-Wrenching Roar our opponent's allies out and have this 8 attack, 3 health ally out. That also has 1 damage reduction, in addition to our other Wulven Strategist there. So our opponent has to take out this Strategist because it has 8 attack. It's going to deal a ton of damage if they don't get rid of it. But of course, we have so many attachments, we can just reapply them. So we're going to go ahead and seek out an attachment. Wulven Prophet is nice. I only run 2 copies because of the fact that, you know, Strategist is just a better way to seek out your attachments. But it's still nice to have, I think. And so we just go ahead and attach something there to our Wulven Strategist, the Pack Alpha. And we're just going to crash our Strategist in there because now we can heal up. And next turn, I have the Bloodfang ability anyway, so I don't mind if the Strategist dies. I'm not trying to keep it alive, and I'm just trying to apply some pressure right now. I think that's a little bit more important than board presence, is having that constant pressure there that our opponent will have to answer. So now our opponent is trying to play 2 allies out here, and this normally would be, you know, and now we're just going to search out the Gut-Wrenching Roar. So really for us, it's no problem when the opponent plays these low-cost allies. They're just asking to get hit with a Gut-Wrenching Roar, so we're just going to do that. Gut-Wrenching Roar onto the Strategist, shuffle back both of our opponent's allies. There we go. Blood Moon, and we're pretty much golden here. Our opponent is going to have, you know, a really strong card somehow to come back from this board. And, yeah. I think they might be able to kill one of our strategists, but... Oh, they have retreat. Okay, never mind. Yeah, so it's still not going to matter, but yeah. So that can be a good counter to our deck, I think, a little bit, is the retreats there. Because Strategist is a pretty expensive card to summon, but anyway, because of how aggressive we were earlier, we're so close to winning the game that we can just attach this Resilience onto the Prophet and take a win that way. Okay, so that was a lot of games, and so I think we're ready to just go over the deck list here. So for the deck, we've got 3 Bloodpack Shamans. Now, this is basically just to grab back your Strategist. 2 Wulven Prophets, this is fine on turn 2, but it's also just a generically good card. If you have less resources or equal resources to the opponent and know their attachments out, which is pretty common, you get an attachment from your deck directly to your hand. That's really nice. Now, I only run 2 because I think if you run more, it can definitely brick. You don't want to see too many of these. I mean, this is like, you have 1 copy, that's fine. And then if you have too many, it's like overkill. And really, the other nice thing is it's just a body. Like, having a 1/4 body in this deck is helpful because we actually don't run a lot of allies, and just having another body out there to kind of distract from the strategists is always really nice. For strategists, this is the key card in the deck. You can't run any lower than this. For Blood Moon, probably one of the best draw engines in the game, so you gotta run 4. 2 Contemplates. Now, the reason I'm running Contemplate is the fact that we really need to see our strategist, And the nice thing about Contemplate is you get to see 3 cards and shuffle back 2. So you get to see more cards than you would with a raw draw card. Like, we could play Sandwich Treasure or another draw card in this slot, but what I like about Contemplate is it helps us find the strategist. And if you can't find your strategist, you're basically dead in the water. Now, we are running a very consistent 40 card deck, but I think the Contemplates just help even more just to find those strategists. For Rabid Bite, now the reason I'm running 4 of these is because it's an easy sacrifice, and what I should say is you shouldn't run a card just because it's an easy sacrifice, but in this deck it's a little bit different because you want to run as many 4-cost abilities as you possibly can because strategists can just take them from the deck. It just is constant free card advantage. That's what makes this card so amazing. And so I just think that Rabid Bite is, it's an okay card that you can run a 4 of because you can grab it from the deck so easily with Strategist. And there are games where you do need 4 of these, especially against a deck that is kind of slower and plays those fatties. Having the ability to turn after turn stun their fatty, cripple it, disable it, and deal damage to their face is really, really good. So I found, like, I wasn't expecting this card to do well, but I'm really liking it in this Strategist deck. Pack Alpha, I'm running a 3 of. This is a card that can definitely brick when you draw multiples because attachments, you can only have 1 copy of an attachment on that ally. So, especially with our low ally count, I just found it a little too bricky on 4. And so that's why I'm running 3. I'm running 4 Shadowfont. This is another card that just helps the early game a little bit more, especially going first. This just speeds you up 1 turn, and what I really like about that is the fact that, you also put your ally out with a +1/+1 attack, +1 health and +1 attack, so that's really nice. And just setting up for like a big turn is kind of what this deck is all about. It's not necessarily about, most decks you're turn by turn having these incremental advantages. This deck is really about set up for a big turn where you just blow up their whole board and just kind of swing the game in that one big turn. And so that's why Shadowfont is nice. And I just run 4 just so I can see it on turn 4, which is when I want to see it. Late game, it's often a sacrifice. 3 Wulven Resilience. This is another card that's an attachment that's amazing, but you only want to run 3, I feel, because if you run 4, you might just draw too many at the wrong time. Gut-Wrenching Roar. This is a surprising one that I'm running only on 2. I feel like you only need 2, so that's why I'm only running 2. And sometimes I do regret not running more because it means I have to hold it if I'm running against an ally-heavy deck. But the reason I'm only running 2 is because, again, it's such a situational card. You need to have a Wulven ally that's not exhausted, and your opponent has to be running multiple 4-cost or less allies. So this is a card I'd prefer to seek when I need it, not see all the time. I think other cards are just a little more flexible. Like, even against solo decks or against a mage, you're still going to want to see your resiliences because that's going to make your bodies much stronger. But Gut-Wrenching Roar is only really good against specific matchups where they're running multiple low-cost allies and you are having the ability to, like, it makes sense for you to exhaust one of your own allies to do this effect. So that's why I only run 2. I could easily see bumping this up. It's also meta dependent. I think it's very good in the meta right now, so maybe you run this on 3 or even 4. Torn Apart is another card that is a little situational, especially in this deck because we have such a low ally count. So that's why I'm only running 1, but it is very good in the right situation, so I think you have to run 1 just in case you can. 2 pendants, just because one of the weaknesses of this deck is going to be something like Voice of Winter and just random stuff like that. So just having a way to get rid of some of those stally cards that can stop us in our tracks is very nice. Stun Turret. This is our counter to something like Shroud. I think you have to run it with Baptism of Fire being so popular right now because that card is going to really ruin your day when you try to use Gut-Wrenching Roar. I think if you see a lot of dragons, you could even bump this up to 2 or 3, just because it counters the Shroud. That's really important. And for Transporting Golem, to finish off the deck list, this deck is all about consistency. Turn 3, you're not really doing much, so might as well run Transporting Golem as just a way to draw a card and just be more consistent while also soaking up some early game damage. I think that's really important in this deck, is not, not losing before turn 5. So you want to run cards like this that make your opponent think twice about just hitting your face all the time. Now, in terms of what you could consider, now there are some other Wulven abilities that cost 4. So Full Moon is one that is interesting. I just don't think it's good enough in this deck. I think if you ran Moonstalker, Blinding Storm is actually kind of interesting. But again, this is another card that really sucks. So I don't know. Even in a Moonstalker, this might not be worth it. Lone Wolf is another interesting thing you can try with Wulven Strategist, just as a way to get this on the board, and maybe you could even run something like a Confluence of Fate kind of engine there. But yeah, as you can see, there aren't that many 4-cost Wulven abilities, but the ones that do exist, they're very situational, and that's why I really am enjoying the Strategist deck. I think it's a totally new way to play Wulvens that you haven't seen before. So in terms of how competitive this deck is, I would say, it's pretty good, but, yeah, it's just pretty good. Not like top tier, I would say, just because of the fact that you need to see the Strategist. And so I think you have that just potential for inconsistency that is going to prevent me from rating this one higher. But it's definitely a competitive deck. I think if you run this in rated and you get used to the plays, you'll probably have a good time with this one. So anyway, that's the deck. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you next time.